Welcome to this Flex Health Talk on exercise, what it exactly is and how to perform it. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Alex Chester and I've been a practicing physiotherapist and graduate rehabilitator for 12 years now. I have a background working in elite sport, including the Premier League, and I now own and run one of the UK's largest independent online and face-to-face physiotherapy clinics. Now, unfortunately for some of you listening, there is no way of hiding the fact that exercise is 100% beneficial and the impact can actually be life-changing. But like most things, there's also a mountain of misinformation out there. There are stigmas around exercise, particularly where physical appearance is involved. So we are also going to delve deep into some of the common questions and misconceptions around exercise. So I am sure you have all been told that exercise is good for you. You should be doing this and you should be doing that. But is it really that important for our health? In a word, yes. And in lots of words, yes, 1,000 times yes. Exercise is genuinely crucial for a healthy life. No matter what your pre-existing opinions are or your understanding of exercise, we categorically cannot deny the benefits of an active lifestyle. In my webinars and presentations, I tend to stay away from lists and heaps of text, which for this slide is definitely a good job, because there is no way I could fit a list on here of the physical and mental benefits that exercise has. But while I've got your attention, I might as well reel off a few. So I'm talking about things like improved heart health, boosted immune system, so you're less likely to get sick, reduced risk of heart disease, weight management, increased muscular strength and function, improved bone health, reduced risk of things like osteoporosis and falls, and it can also come in crucial when dealing with pain management. A saying I like to throw around is movement is medicine. Physical activity sets off a whole load of signals and messages within our body, which, if repeated, improve how our body actually functions, and our brain and our organs and everything within it. We diminish the risk of cardiovascular disease and metabolic disorders, so we're talking about illness such as strokes, cancers, diabetes. Again, just like the benefits, the lists of things it counteracts are endless. Exercise can also help enhance our concentration, both at work or at home, day-to-day life. It can improve our cognitive ability, so improving our memory, fine motor skills such as our hand-eye coordination, and ultimately it can improve our attention span. So once again, movement is medicine. And what is more, the benefits of physical activity far outweigh the risks in almost every population group. Increasing your levels of physical activity is one of the few interventions that works across all age range, all ethnic groups, and it doesn't matter what your current baseline or ability is. Exercise does not discriminate. And in my opinion, and the opinion of many healthcare workers out there, it comes down to a simple fact of living well versus living long. But like most things, there's also a mountain of misinformation out there. There are stigmas around exercise, particularly where physical appearance is involved. So if we take a look at this black line on the graph on the slide here, it shows how physical health starts to decline after the age of approximately 35. This is irreversible, and after 35, it's a sorry fact, but our body is on its way down. If you just go around your daily life with no exercise, a rather sedentary lifestyle, your health is very likely to follow the curvature of that black line, with a rather rapid decline, especially in the years after sort of 55 to 60. But the great news is that by engaging in regular exercise and doing a few of the things that we've all been told are good for you, we can significantly increase your health span and slow down that impact of aging. So basically, for those who enjoy exercise or partake in it regularly, when their age rolls round to the realms of 80 years old, it is possible for them to have the same mind and body of a 45 to 50-year-old who doesn't participate in exercise or isn't generally active. So what springs to mind when we think of fitness and exercise? Fitness and exercise can be sometimes intimidating, and things like this on screen, Ronnie Coleman, spring to mind. Exercise doesn't mean training for a marathon or competing against Arnie in the gym, but instead it could be increasing your step count slightly, aiming to be able to go up and down stairs without pain or without running out of breath. The great thing about exercise is that when it's done right, we see a direct result, and we can ultimately use it to achieve a number of goals. Now, this slide certainly isn't meant to be demonizing lifting weights. I know we've got an extreme version in the back on the slide here, but lifting weights is a fantastic way to keep nearly every inch of your body healthy. Even extreme lifting like big Ronnie Coleman here, there isn't evidence to say that the act itself is unhealthy. However, getting to that level takes a ridiculously amount of time, effort, and potentially unhealthy levels of dedication and a few questionable enhancements. So, what exactly is exercise? Exercise is any form of structured activity requiring physical effort. And we carry this out with the main goal of improving our health or fitness. It can quite literally be anything from a stroll around the park, walking to the top of the street, playing five-a-side on a Wednesday night. You may have come across the recommended doses before, but the bare minimum required for a healthy lifestyle is 150 minutes of moderately intense exercise or 75 minutes of vigorously intense exercise. Globally, more than 25% of the world's population, so that's 1.4 billion adults, are insufficiently active and do not meet these minimum guidelines. Looking at these stats, it's 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men do not move enough week on week. Now, rather worryingly and unfortunately, this 1.4 billion people have a 20 to 30% increased risk of death compared to those who meet the minimum requirements. There is a dose-response association between total time sitting and the risk of dying from practically anything. The pillars here highlight the weekly recommendations for the variations of exercise, and before you panic, as a minimum, you only need to pick one. So, moderate activity is literally anything that gets your heart beating that little bit faster compared to when you are stationary. When doing moderate exercise, you should be breathing harder than if you were inactive, yet still be able to speak and hold a conversation. If you have access to a device that measures your heart rate, moderate exercise should get your heart rate going to about 50 to 70% of your max heart rate. So some of these modern devices can actually calculate your training zones for you, making this whole process a little bit easier. You can also use tools like the talk test, which basically means before you start your workout, you count as high as you can as you're breathing out. So ever so often throughout your workout or just your general walk, start counting again and compare those numbers. If the numbers counted during your exercise drops to about 70%, you're working at the moderate level. Vigorous activity, sometimes called high intensity exercise, is activity done with a large amount of effort, resulting in a substantially higher heart rate and rapid breathing. So with vigorous activity, it's usually hard to speak in full sentences. We're usually getting the heart rate going nice and fast, and we start to be a little bit out of breath. Activities like running, cycling, single tennis, for example, are usually classed as vigorous activities. And finally, we move on to my favorite, strength training. We should be aiming to train 3 to 4 times per week and target 2 of the major muscle groups. This basically means we don't train the same area over and over again. The major muscle groups are broken down into legs, chest, and back. Again, some people being really picky will split legs into 2, but we don't need to get bogged down in that. Now, if you just turn your attention to this broken pillow, if you have a sedentary job, it takes 60 to 75 minutes of moderate exercise a day just to reverse the detrimental effects of sitting down for 8 hours a day. This means you guys have to hit 300 to 420 minutes of moderate activity every day just to undo the negative impacts of sitting down. And for a tiny bit more of bad news, hobbies that include prolonged sitting, such as watching TV, playing video games, then you guys have to do more than the 420 minutes to counteract the further detrimental effects of your combined work and hobbies. Alarmingly, I must stress the importance of moving more, as the evidence seems to show a direct relationship between the total time spent sitting down and the risk of dying from pretty much anything. More significantly, the studies actually found that this risk was independent of overall physical activity levels. So it basically doesn't matter how active you are. If you are sitting down for long periods, you are increasing your risk of chronic disease. We do have a separate Flex Health talk discussing this area in depth for those that are interested on the detrimental effects of sitting. So a quick recap, all these studies that observed those who spent 3, 6, 8 and 11 hours plus sat down a day with minimal breaks or periods of non-sitting. Ready for a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So the good news is it's not all doom and gloom, and that we know, in contrast, simply moving more and moving regularly has a powerful influence on reducing the risk of disease, death, and overall improving your quality of life. So if you do have a job that involves sitting for 8 hours, the golden rule that we will keep coming back to within this presentation is get up and move every 20 to 30 minutes. So before I start sounding all high and mighty, as I'm well aware how easy some jobs make it to be active compared to others, this is something I actually came across firsthand, and I'd like to start by telling you a short story that changed the way I work with my patients and my overall outlook on being active day to day. So as I've said before, I am a physio, and my job involves being on my feet for large parts of the day, going through exercise, showing patients demonstrations. That's generally sort of a day in the life of me. However, in 2023, we had a bit of a company day where myself and the other heads of department put together some presentations, hired a boardroom, got to dress in normal clothes, which all is a bit of a novelty to us in the physio world. And we proceeded to be in that boardroom for about 7 hours. Now, in any given day, when I get home to my 2 sausage dogs, I've usually done anywhere from 7 to 10,000 steps. My heart rate has been up and down, and I've burnt a few calories. On this day, in that 6 to 7 hour window, I'd only done 800 steps, and I genuinely couldn't believe it. But ultimately, this led to me having a huge increased appreciation of how hard it can be to move during the day, how hard it is to hit activity targets like the ones previously mentioned, and even getting to a step count can be somewhat of a challenge. So for me, on any normal day, I may only need to hit an extra 2,000 to 3,000 steps at the end of the day, which pleases the little legs of Blue and Pepper, the sausage dogs. But at the end of my day on this day, I was nearly 10,000 steps shy of my target. But again, every cloud silver lining, it did make me think of some clever ways to increase steps during your working day, which I'm about to share with you now. So before we return the focus on what most people see as a traditional exercise, I think having the tools to reduce the detrimental effects of being stuck in one seated position for hours on end is vital. And let's not forget, it is also important for the employers to be more understanding on why it is actually beneficial to promote moving more at work. My first piece of advice is to basically track your step count via your phone or ideally a watch. Just the act of knowing you are tracking this will increase the amount you actually walk. And as a target, I recommend starting at around 7,500 per day, with the aim of soon making your way up to 10,000. This is one super easy way to start rebuilding that pillar that we discussed on the previous slide. Again, the golden rule is to move every 20 to 30 minutes. This quite literally means getting your bum out of your seat, not just having a little stretch and a shuffle. And here are a few examples of how you can build that into your day when you're in the office or working from home. So I'm sure none of these are groundbreaking, but having a standing or movable desk, we can then aim for 20 minutes of standing for every 20 minutes of sitting. Again, stating the obvious, go for a walk on your break rather than going to the break room and again, sitting down. Again, this can be hard to get your head around sometimes. Sometimes we want nothing more than to sit down with a cup of tea, read the paper. But again, there's no excuse why you can't get a drink, engage on your phone and go for a walk. Speaking of phones, take a call on the move, standing up, generally walking about. Every 30 minutes, do a lap of your desk. Go get a drink of water. And over time, we can start getting really creative and introducing lifestyle changes such as maybe parking 2 streets down or the furthest spot away in the car park. take the stairs rather than the lift, literally anything you can think of that increases your steps and gets you moving. And you will genuinely soon see that these small but daily changes soon add up, and they set a much more sizable goal in terms of a walk after work to achieve another maybe 2,000 to 3,000 steps instead of having to hit 6,000 to 8,000 steps just to meet a recommended target. And I will finish this slide by acknowledging I do live in the real world. I appreciate we can become engrossed in our work. You all have targets to hit and deadlines to meet. We are not advising anyone to take a 10, 15-minute break every 30 minutes, but just be aware and listen to your body. Not only is it good physically and for things like increasing your life expectancy, but it can also make us more productive and achieve better work outcomes. So let's recap. First up, we have moderate exercise. This is basically going for a walk, any activity that gets the blood pumping. And this ties in really nicely what we previously said about increasing your daily steps, especially for beginners and people new to exercise. One thing we have to be wary about when starting or returning to exercise is reducing our risk of injury. Exercise, no matter how small or big, can be a bit of a shock to the system. There is one time every year, without fail, when myself, the clinic, probably every physio in the country is bombarded, inundated with people making themselves sore with a usual knee-jerk reaction and a sudden increase in exercise or activity. Can anyone think of when this might be? So, clue, start of the year, January. Every year, new me. We get everyone from people trying to lose weight, get stronger, run a marathon, and 9 times out of 10, these people are throwing themselves straight in at the deep end. They're going full hog and they are hitting activity levels that they have not hit in years. Some of them since doing it in school in year 11 PE. And as you know by now, after the age of 35, year on year, we are not the same person physically. So on screen now are just some examples of how you can achieve your minimum requirements or recommendations. I've included some examples for both complete novices and for those who want to return to exercise after some time off. So first and foremost for the novices, nice and simple, just walk. Walking. Start small and build up. I've gone with a baseline of either 22 minutes every day or 30 minutes 5 times a week. It's completely up to you. Both numbers will get you to that required target. From there, we can soon build up and we can start adding 5 minutes to the walk each week. And for those people wanting to return to be more active with cardio-based exercises, I'm going to actually direct you to the Couch to 5K program. Why try and reinvent the wheel? This program is superbly structured and will quickly and safely get you up to a level of running 5K. So now we move on to the vigorous and strength training. This requires a bit more structure and potentially a little bit more guidance. Vigorous exercise involves maintaining a raised heart rate and being relatively out of breath for a period of time. Again, utilizing an activity watch can assist you to track whether you are maintaining a vigorous level or you are dropping in and out of the moderate to vigorous levels. So firstly, sustain activity such as going for a run at a level that you can maintain for at least 20 to 25 minutes. This way you can do it 3 times a week and achieving your minimum requirements. Secondly, you can complete what we call high intensity interval training, or often called HIIT or circuit training. So HIIT training involves performing a movement at a max intensity for a short period of time, followed by a short period of rest. We then repeat this process for the desired amount of time. The benefits of this training from a health point of view are huge across a number of our vital organs. It can help reduce blood pressure, improve your ability again to fight disease such as diabetes. It can also improve lung function and heart function. And for most of us, time is valuable. Trying to find a designated slot to perform exercise, HIIT training can be an extremely practical way of exercising. It allows you to maximize your exercise input in a relatively short amount of time. So the good news with HIIT training is your rest period actually contributes towards your total time exercising. This is on the assumption of 1, you're actually giving it your all whilst you are working, and that the rest period is relatively short. You can't just be blasting out 1 minute of exercise for 5 minutes of rest. I wish it was that easy. And we finally come on to strength training, my favourite for a number of reasons. And no, you don't need a gym, although over time it does potentially help. Strength training isn't all about getting big muscles and throwing big weights around. Success can be achieved with light weights, even body weight. In fact, body weighted squats, press-ups, pull-ups are all fantastic ways to start and introduce yourself to strength training. So using the evidence available to us in the research, strength training is the best proven method of reducing the decline of our physical health over time with age. Not only does it benefit our muscles and joints, it strengthens our bones, reduces the risk of osteoporosis, your risk of falling. It helps us stay healthy for longer by increasing our immune system. It can be handy for managing blood sugar levels, improving your heart rate, lungs, reduce body fat, and overall it can increase your self-esteem. And because the intensity can be high, it allows us to easily meet the minimum weekly requirements in 2 to 3 sessions of training a week. So one thing that's probably important to mention is being honest with yourself and knowing how frequently you can realistically work out per week. Because this will help mold your individual sessions, it can help you build in a routine. If you can commit to 2 exercise sessions per week, you want to be doing a mix of exercises that target a number of body parts. For example, 2 leg-based exercises, 2 chest-based, 2 shoulders, 2 back. If you're able to commit to 3 or more per week, you are better to stick to 1 or 2 body parts per session. And lastly, with strength training, especially for those with minimal experience, I have to mention DOMS. So delayed onset muscle soreness. Be prepared to have some soreness and stiffness in your muscles for up to 3 days after your workout. This is completely normal, and if you're anything like me, you will actually learn to love them. And again, as I mentioned, the vigorous and more strength-based training do require a bit more structure. We have provided a workout for each category on the Flex Health app. As I mentioned, I do live in the real world, and of course there are always barriers to exercise. But to be brutally honest, most are sort of self-made or at least self-enforced. There are a long list of reasons why people do not exercise, but we're going to discuss some of the most common that we see. First, education. And in my opinion, it is the biggest barrier because it can both help or hinder nearly every other barrier that we see. Educating yourself or discussing the issues with a health professional or even an active friend can help you overcome barriers. Being genuinely aware and understanding the benefits as well as understanding the risks associated with a non-active lifestyle can help you make the decision and find the time to actually exercise. So as I mentioned time there, this neatly brings us on to probably the most common barrier, the I just don't have time barrier. Now, using what we've already discussed, exercise can be as simple as making your day more active. Just as there are little things you can do at work, you can do the same at home or in your spare time. For example, using a bodyweight exercise such as a squat, a press up, a lunge, etc. Completing 10 reps of this exercise every time you have a spare 20 seconds, every time you leave a room or go to make a cup of tea, every time you get out of your chair. But ultimately, and being brutally honest, it always comes down to making exercise a priority or finding the time. We all have busy lives, and yes, some people are fortunate that they enjoy physical activity, but the vast majority of us will come home, look after the kids, do the house, eat your tea. The next choice is yours. Do you sit down, nestle in with a cup of tea, or do you substitute 30 to 60 minutes of TV with something a little bit more active? Or even do a home workout and combine the two? And now we come to my speciality, people who are injured, or at least have a painful body part that is, again, stopping them exercise. Being a physio, I see a lot of people who tell me they can't exercise due to pain, and for, again, the vast majority, I spend time talking to them to help them understand that this simply just isn't true. Exercise is consistently proven to alleviate pain, aid recovery, and be beneficial long-term to nearly every condition known to man. And yes, that does mean your bad back, your dodgy knee, your wonky shoulder. The case for the vast majority in the I can't exercise because it hurts camp haven't been given the education or the tools to complete the appropriate level of exercise or even the appropriate specific exercises. So hopefully my ramblings over the last 20 minutes have broken down some of the barriers bespoke to you. But if anyone wanting further support, I'd fully recommend reaching out to a health professional such as a physio, sports therapist, or a good personal trainer to help you start on your road to becoming more active. So as we come towards the end of our webinar, I'm hopeful that after listening to what I've been saying, education maybe isn't so much of a barrier anymore. But for those of you still feeling a little bit lost or unsure where the start line is, I came across this really nice graphic on how to pick an exercise, which is on the screen now. It is pretty self-explanatory, but it also applies if you've reached out to a friend to maybe help you train. So I'm not going to read through all of it, but if we go down towards the bottom, we come to this cycle section. An exercise should be somewhat challenging, but not to the level of making it painful, too hard, or simply not enjoyable. Getting this level right is crucial not only to the sort of moment and the time you're actually exercising, but it can help you become more consistent and start reaping the benefits associated with consistent and regular exercise. Which neatly brings me to our final few slides. Some handy tips to stop people falling off the wagon once they've taken the plunge to start being more active. So my first tip, and probably the most important, is enjoyment. You have to enjoy it, or at least find some enjoyment in there somewhere. Now for most people this comes at the end, dripping with a bit of sweat and the relief that it's finally all over. It's only the sickos and the lucky few who enjoy it whilst in the middle of a session. But again, we do know exercise puts us in a good mood. It releases endorphins, which are the happy hormones in our body. And finding an exercise that you genuinely enjoy can be the difference between your trainers sat there collecting dust or you wearing out the soles and you're ready to go buy a new pair. So tip number 2 is create a routine and make it a priority. So life will constantly throw curveballs, we get distracted or our focus gets drawn elsewhere. Highlighting regular slots in your week that is solely for you to solely exercise, will make it much easier to commit to. And remember, you are investing in yourself, so put yourself first. And remember, exercise is an investment in yourself. Put yourself first and say no to things that clash with your specific exercise time. Those who succeed usually start with a small expectation level, small goals, and they don't panic and jump straight into a bag of cheese and onion crisps when they've had a bad week. Hitting small goals regularly can give us that little buzz and that personal sense of achieving something. So I am going slightly off topic here, but we see these tactics in the gaming world who use achievement points to keep us playing, because every time we tick something off, we get that nice little endorphin release, we get a nice buzz, and it keeps us focused and engaged in what we're doing. They also use these to stop those negative Nelly thoughts creeping in. Well, I've missed all this week, so I might as well stop. And ultimately, all these 3 tips that I've mentioned, they all lead to consistency. Now, consistency is key. It is the biggest factor by a country mile to dictate a successful relationship with exercise. And they say it takes 66 days to create a habit. If you can commit to 3 months, not only will you feel and see visible results by this stage, but you've reached a threshold that makes it easier to maintain exercise as a part of your day-to-day, week-to-week life. And when all else fails and you've had a busy week, you're always a YouTube search away from a quick home workout. And finally, let's summarize what we've learned. So exercise isn't just going to the gym, joining a running club, it is a whole wide range of physical activity. The benefits are not just theory. The facts and figures are supported with mountains of research and medical evidence. But worryingly, so are the impacts of not being active. Sitting really is the new smoking. But it isn't all doom and gloom. You can save yourself a lot of hard work by following the golden rule of moving every 20 to 30 minutes. This quite literally again means getting your bum out of your seat whilst you're at work. By not following this simple lifestyle change, you are making it so much harder to rebuild that pillar that we discussed. You go from needing 150 minutes of exercise to needing over 400 minutes just to be on a level playing field. So even for some of the hardened gym goers, 400 minutes of exercise can be some mountain to climb if you're having to do that every week. But I will finish by being rather brutally honest. It does come down to you. You are the only one who can make yourself become more active. So if any of this sounds familiar, you might find our other talks useful. If you are currently in pain or struggling with an injury, you can contact a Flex Health physio directly on the Flex Health app. You can also email us any inquiries at flex-health.co.uk. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I hope you've learned something and I hope you enjoyed it.